Soy Joe to conservative Neo-Rican Peter Vasquez. I hope everybody's having a great middle of the week, Bob.
It's not gray and drizzly and rainy and heavy overcast. That's positive.
And it's supposed to get a lot warmer. I was going to try to do like a serious intro, and for whatever reason, as I was doing it, I'm like, what is serious about an intro that I really need to be serious about?
That's a real question now, isn't it?
You know something? Yesterday, sir, I'm saying, I was listening a little bit thereafter.
Yes.
I didn't realize my show was up for the highest bidder. Mm-hmm.
Just pulling your leg a little bit there.
Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like I really need to reach deep and far and remember sponsor this show so that I don't get outbid by one of my own sponsors. I'm just kidding, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll talk with Mr. Greg about that.
Yeah. Greg, you're fired. I'm just kidding. I hope you enjoyed the show yesterday when I reviewed it as I'm getting ready to post it. I'll tell you, I thought it was a phenomenal show. And talking about youth in America and their involvement, especially when it comes to their balance and finding their balance in faith, politics, and entrepreneurship. Listen, I'll step aside for that conversation all day, any day. But check it out, though. Today, we're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about what it means to really have school choice, or what is a charter school, really? I mean, is it something that we need? Is it something that we don't need? Is there a difference between these school choice options and public schools? So here to help me with this discussion, right? Because like I've said a million times, I ain't no expert, right? Jack of all trades, expert in nothing. So I am bringing on today for you and I to have a conversation, 346-3000, right? The Honorable Dr. Paul Miller, who is the CEO of Rochester Charter Champions, right? This gentleman leads with over 23 years. Yeah, I said 23 years in education, known for transforming Black and brown student outcomes. He champions, all right, now listen to this word carefully. He champions equitable education and rights on improving communities through family, community, and schooling. Bienvenido al Next Step Show, Dr. Miller. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you all for having me here.
Absolutely. Hey, did you guys know that today is the anniversary of the 1967 U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Loving versus Virginia, which struck down laws banning interracial marriages?
Did not know that.
No?
Me either.
No? Yeah. I found that
67
out.
seems awfully late for that decision to have come.
Well, listen, that's what the research said I did, says. So either I got really bad research or you're right. It seems awfully late that had come.
I don't believe it's pretty accurate.
You think so?
It's pretty accurate.
I would hope so, because boy, if not, my research skills are like not very good. Although I do make mistakes every so often. But I'll tell you, I'm glad for bills like that, guys, because if not, my Chrissy and I would not have been a couple for the last 20 years. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Very, very, very crazy. Of course, a lot of these laws just kind of like had not been enforced for many, many years and were just remaining on the books.
That needed to be cleaned up.
Yeah, I would think. At least I would hope that's the case.
I'd have to look a little closer.
No, they were being enforced.
Were they
They
really?
were
Is that
being
right?
enforced, and people were being disciplined for interracial marriage. I mean, even just I'm a product of interracial relationships, where I know even where I was born in the 70s, but even in the 80s, it was difficult growing up being a product of interracial relationships,
Oh, wow.
where it was an issue. And I wouldn't say that it's an issue the same way anymore. I think times have changed in some matters, but in others, we still have struggles to face.
I have to admit, Bobby, I as I recall back, I do remember Chris and I, kind of noticing differences in people's response to us. Here we were, a Hispanic and a non-Hispanic, and 5 kids, and and this was where we were working, so we didn't have the nice car or anything like that at the time, and the people did look at us different. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, sure. I mean, I can believe that, and that's unfortunate.
Well, you're in I mean, your wife's a little darker than you, isn't she? I mean, isn't that considered?
No,
I'm
he's
just
French
joking.
Canadian, Peter. You know this.
Oh, so
He's
it is
French.
definitely interracial. Isn't that considered that? She's Canadian, you're not?
What? International, I guess.
Oh, I mean, it's inter something. I mean,
Born
that's
in
it's all about
Rochester.
unity. Ladies and gentlemen, don't mind the silly conversation. Dr. Miller, please feel free to chime in at any given time, not to put you on the spot there. But,
Okay.
you know, race has become such an interesting concept in our society today that it just almost seems that it's become something that politicians use to create a message. And sometimes, regardless of affiliation, it doesn't seem to me that, well, you know, that message is always in our favor. I'm just saying, it just seems that way. But enough of all that. We're talking education. You are the CEO of the Rochester Charter Champions. But before we get into that, Doctor, tell us who Paul Miller is. But listen, not your bio on the website. Tell us who you were, what barriers you took down, next steps you took that brought you to where you are today with the passion that you have, especially for education.
Sure, absolutely. I grew up in the city of Rochester, grew up in the Hudson Joseph Avenue area in the Center Commander projects. And so in the 80s, if you weren't from there, you probably didn't want to walk through there at nighttime. It was one of those type of places, obviously a little bit different nowadays. Grew up as in a household to a single parent mother. Father wasn't around. He had issues with drug addiction and some other things. My mother was depressed, and she often was depressed because I have a stepfather who was addicted to crack cocaine as well. So we had a house at a point in time, lost a house. That's how we ended up in the projects. We ended up next to the drug house. So when you have a drug addict who is the stepfather and you live next to the drug house, what do you think happens? Your stuff often is missing, or there's other issues. So we had to deal with all those things. And my mother being depressed because of her depression, she would either lock herself in the room. Often when I was there and I was raising myself, when he wasn't there, because she was sad he wasn't there. And when he was there, she would lock herself in the room to spend time with him. So depression was an ugly word that really affected our family. But I knew that I didn't want to live like that. I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew that I had to do something different. And so I was a good athlete, wasn't great. Good enough to play Division I football. I got hurt within the first year of playing. After playing some football and coming back, I said, you know what, I need to do something that gives me an opportunity to give back and do some things that I believe in. So I became an educator. So I went to school at SUNY Brockport, started at University of Buffalo, came back, went to SUNY Brockport, got a bachelor's degree in teaching. After finishing the degree, I taught for about 5 years. And through that journey, I saw that there was a lot of decisions being made that weren't best for kids. And because of those decisions not being good for kids, I said, I need to do something different. I need to do something to create change and to be able to help and be part of the solution and not the problem. So I went back, got a master's degree. Went and got a master's degree from St. John Fisher. And through that process, when finishing, I was assistant principal in the Rochester City School District as well. I was there for another 7 years, so 12 years total in Rochester City School District. But through that time, I saw a lot of leaders that, again, were not making decisions that were best for children. I saw leaders that the systems weren't set up to succeed. And I wanted to be part of the solution and not the problem. So I went and got my doctorate because I was facing some adversity and some other situations with moving up the way that I thought that I should be and the way the results were showing, because I did some things to help move the needle and get some results where in a commonsensical world, it would make sense that, yeah, this guy should probably be promoted. Didn't work out like that. So I went and got my doctorate. My doctorate's in executive leadership, and it's an EDD in education, obviously. And so I got a call soon after that from a school in Albany. It was Green Tech Charter School in Albany. Asked, was I interested? First I said, no, not really interested in going. You know, I had the traditional life at this point in time. I was an AP. I had house, car, kids, all of life. Didn't think I was necessarily going to leave, and decided that God wanted me to do something different. So I decided to take the opportunity in Albany. It was an all-boys school, 97% Black and brown young men in over 90% poverty. And so when I got there, there was about a 57% graduation rate. And a month in, someone came to me and said, hey, you're not going to meet payroll next week. You're $90,000 short. What are you going to do? And so I moved my whole life to do all of this, and I said, I'm going to figure it out. And I did. So for the 11 years I was there, we averaged a 95% graduation rate, 100% acceptance to college, millions of dollars in scholarship, sometimes upwards of 25 million in a year of scholarship money. And we also, when I left, there was 2 million in the bank. So what I do is I build systems that work. I build systems that work for all kids, but specifically Black and brown kids in impoverished environments. And I build systems that are proven, tried and true. And so that's what I do, and that's how I got there.
Hey, when we get back from break, could you mind sharing with us like some of the decisions that work best to students that you saw? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Paul Miller. Mira, no te vayas. Don't go nowhere. ¿Por qué? Because we got more to say right here on the Next Step shows with the on the WYSL stations. How about that?
Yeah, how about that? 346-3000. Join the conversation. If you'd like to talk to the good doctor and Peter, love to have you join us. Again, 585-346-3000. Or if you're listening to the Southern Tier or even across the lake, 1-866-552-1009. We'll be back.
Yeah. Great intro.
Oh, thank you.
Great story. You know, it's such a common theme that we have, and that's why I always like to start off that way, because I mean, people that listen regularly are hearing that. I mean, everybody from Ben Carson to Nick Searcy to who else? Even I mean, these are major players in this country, and almost all of them started off exactly that way.
Right.
It kills me, but yet the narrative is, and the narrative I grew up in, what you see in front of you is all you got.
Right.
So I almost fell into the trap.
Right.
Well, I guess I did for a while, because I ended up dropping out of school and being a teen parent. It was just my father was like, hell no, that ain't happening.
No, we all did. Like, I fell into the traps where I did a lot of things, I was involved in certain street life activities that I knew I had to get out of and do different. It wasn't what God wanted for me.
I want to thank WYSL listeners for their support over the last couple of years. During those years, not only did I experience the gratification of providing you the best repairs and customer service.
How's the faceplant page look? Just talking to him.
Remember, flowers, I haven't looked. Parent needs. And thank you for supporting our locally owned family business. Future Christ Rochester is growing with the help from the John R. Wegman Foundation.
I was taking care of getting Bob Johnson programmed and the political taken care of.
And drills for the spring and summer. Our middle school.
I just want to say that FCC site is so sluggish.
Our new name change for that program.
Yep, another government site.
Make a one-time gift of $300 or a monthly gift of $25 to sponsor a kid for a year. Go to yfcrochester.org/donate.
Now that the good weather's back, you'll want to make sure your vehicle is in tip-top shape. Whether it's for the daily commute or that vacation you're planning, for quality, affordable vehicle.
Last spot.
Auto Service, 1132 Westridge Road.
All right, man. Damn it.
Looks and sounds good.
Oil change, brakes,
Thank you.
alignments.
And this program brought to you by our fine sponsors, Rock Auto Service, 1132 Ridge Road West, right near Mount Reed. Flower City Collision. Yeah, got it that time. And Ryan Murphy and Associates, the real estate appraisal firm. John and Judy will take good care of you, whatever your appraisal needs are. Again, here's your host, Peter.
Well, I am surely glad I am not the only one that stumbled there for a minute on today's show.
I have to be retrained. I was just told yesterday by Jose, it's not said for Congress. So.
Got to be retrained.
You want this phone call?
I do.
All right. Hey, Lorraine, you're on the air. What's?
Hi, Lorraine. Lorraine, I appreciate that very much, and thank you for the call.
Thank you, Lorraine, too, for the compliment.
Absolutely. So before we get into the decisions, I know I said I wanted to ask you that when we came back from break, but based on Lorraine's call, let's go there for a minute. I mean, can you define, because what equitable education and equitable funding is? And I'll tell you, and I think many of my listeners and what she was referring to look at the term equitable as a term that measures the outcome while ignoring the input, where we should measure the input to gauge the outcome. So, I mean, are we wrong? Is it different in this case? I mean, what? She gave you a great compliment on that. So
No,
what
thank
is
you.
all that? What's equitable education funding?
When I think of equity, let's think of equity versus equal. So equal means that we're in my terms and definitions, that equal is everyone gets the same thing. So let's use an example of, let's say I brought a new pair of shoes for everybody in here in the studio today. There's three of us in the studio, and I gave you a pair of shoes. That would be equal, right? But I gave you all a size 10 and a half. Do you all wear a 10 and a half?
No.
What size do you
Well, I
wear?
do, actually.
Actually, I wear about a 10.
Okay, so
I can make the half work.
so you might be able to make it work, right?
But I get the point.
But
though, right?
you know, if I brought the same thing for you, equity would be making sure that I figured out what you needed, and not just what would be equal. So equity would be, you know what, what's your size? And if I'm going to bring you something, I'm going to bring you something that is equitable.
Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, 346-3000. We're going to get back to that topic. I'd love to have your opinion. Aquí tenemos al señor Dr. Paul Miller, CEO of Rochester Charter Champions. Sir, before break, you were talking about decisions that weren't in the best interest of the students that you noticed, not just as an educator, but also as an administrator. Can you tell us about that and maybe share some examples of what types of decisions you saw?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was there in the city school district. I saw a lot of it was decisions for adults. What was going to make your career flourish because you followed what someone asked you to follow and not necessarily what was best for kids. So a couple examples, there would be unethical things that would be asked to do, or there were even times that the district would send certain people to certain buildings so that they could deliberately try to get rid of them, or they would deliberately try to push them out, or they would do the same thing to kids, to setups. And again, I experienced this firsthand with the leadership that I worked with and through, and just the overall systems that were put in. It was always about covering your back or covering yourself. It was never about, is this what needs to be put in place, and how do we achieve the outcomes that we need to achieve for children, and let's put those things in place. It was always about what was best for kids. And even now, you think about the politics of the district and the way that things are set up. It's all about protecting adults and what's in their best interest, not necessarily what's best for kids. Prime example, something as simple as I know that one of the union's rules for teachers is that they can't work after school for free. And not that I'm saying anybody should work for free, right? I don't think that is. I think if you do the work, you should be paid for it. But I also think as a teacher, you make commitments, and your commitments should be to your children. And if you want to make a decision that's not forced to stay after school and to work with kids because they need additional help, to be told you can't do that because you're not getting paid for it, that should be problematic. And it's problematic to me. And that's just one small example of something that I believe creates other systemic problems.
Well, most absolutely, because now you got teachers focused on a paycheck versus on the love of teaching, but more so, you take away the ability for a teacher with a heart to just say, listen, I want to help. I don't know if I mentioned this before to you, Paul, but I taught for 5.5 years as a Spanish and cross-cultural communications teacher at Charles Finney School.
Okay.
And of course they didn't, I mean, they were like, you stay after if you want,
Right,
we
right.
probably can't pay you anyway, so I'm glad you're doing it for free. But you know, the amount of black and brown kids that went through that school, many on a scholarship, and earned that scholarship. It wasn't just given to them, right? I mean, these are kids that like you, from a bad situation, actually same neighborhoods. I grew up in the same neighborhood you did, right? Are now graduates from colleges like Columbia and what else? St. John's. I mean, some of these great colleges that are out there.
Right.
They didn't let that circumstances get in front of them. I've got to ask then, based on these decisions and the way you described it, community schools, to me, that seems to have the focus more on the political side of education versus on the student side. Do you view them that way, or is there a value to them? Because to me, things like charter schools or school choice seems to be the better option and more inclusive of parents.
Right. So a community school, I think it all depends on the intent of the user, right? And so who's designing it? Are they designing it to do what it's actually supposed to do? Now, the ideology of a community school and a charter school in most cases are very alike. They're aligned to usually longer school hours, involving the community as stakeholders, bringing in businesses and partnerships to get it done. Comprehensively supporting the community is the goal or ideology. Now, the downfall of community schools is often that the model is expensive to run. And so if there's proper funding for it and there's the political red tape is taken out of it, which thus gives you a charter school. And a charter school is a public school. It just is its own autonomous district. And that's basically what a charter school is. Right. It's completely a public school. There's no, private charter schools are illegal in New York State. So for all of those.
As they should be.
Right, absolutely. Because I think there's too much dictation of money and politics in that rather than what's best for kids.
Right. So let me ask, because, again, it seems to me more that the school choice or charter school as a choice for parents for their students to go to does make more sense. You mentioned that community schools are more expensive. Right now, at least the last numbers that I saw, the city school district receives about $24,000 per pupil, where a charter school only receives about $14,000 per pupil. Correct?
Yes and no. So let me elaborate on that, because when you look at it and you break it down, look at the math on the city school district's budget. So they have $1 billion budget. However, when you subtract their money from their the money that goes towards charter schools, because they comes from per state per pupil allocation. So those are the state per pupil allocation numbers. But when you do the math, there's approximately about 20,000 students in this RCSD, and they really have $1 billion budget, and you take out about 182 million that charter schools use to operate and run. Now you get about $40,000 per child. And that's with all the other per pupil allocation is 24, but all the other funding, it's $40,000 per child. The charter school receives 14.3, and that's all they get. There's no other money, there's no other funding.
Right, you don't get the Title 10. Was it the Title 10?
There's some small Title I funding and some other things. I think even as a school that I operated on, I think I had maybe a $6 million budget, and our Title I funding was about $160,000 a year.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Paul Miller. No te vayas. We'll be right back, right here at the Conservative New Yorker, and of course, La Voz de Libertad. We'll be right back. Great conversation.
Oh, good, thank you.
I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. Would you like any?
No, I'm good. I got water. Thank you.
So is the RCSD still got 500 people in the central office?
Absolutely. That's part of their problem. So
you gotta bring that up.
So that's part of the problem. See, if I was the superintendent, I would kibosh, I would create an autonomous school model where they would still be underneath the RCSD, but each school would have its own budget. I would specifically train leaders on how to run autonomous schools, and I would train teachers how to work within autonomous schools, build a model and systems that work, show everybody how to utilize it, get rid of all the middlemen, at least most of them, and either put them back in positions to succeed, or if they don't, they got to go.
So a lot of those people, Paul, in the central office, are those positions mandated by the state and federal? No?
They're created because they don't know how to operate, and they think that they need them because they need, but they're think about it. They're running on $40,000 a child. I'm able to run schools on $14,000 a child and do it exceptionally better.
Yeah.
So imagine if the city school district just had, and they were taught how to do it, and they were taught how to utilize that at the 24,000 per pupil all the extra money that they would save if we were able to get rid of all the rest of the fat. But also, with autonomy creates higher accountability and higher responsibility.
Sure.
And so you change that. Research shows that it works.
Throwing money at the problem actually is counterproductive.
Absolutely. And that's what they do.
Yeah.
Versus really solving the problem by building systems that work and really implementing them, regardless if adults want to do it or not.
So RCSD, fixable or no?
Not currently the way that it is. It would have to be currently no. Harvard professor recently said it's the only unfixable district in the country.
Really?
Yes. And so,
Can you ask that on the air, please? That same question.
Yeah, sure. No problem. I don't want to upstate. It's your show.
No, but
I
didn't think about that question, and I like that.
but again, I believe that, and respectfully, again, I believe I could fix it. I believe I could fix it if I can't fix it underneath the current conditions. And so I have terms, and we can talk about it on here because I talk about it all the time.
For air. This is a conversation we should be having.
Well, you brought that question. This is why that's why I keep him around.
No, it's all good.
Plus, I open and close your mic.
Not that I can do it without him at this point. Although he's taught me everything I know.
No, it's good stuff.
screwing
No,
up
you
today now.
guys are great. This is good.
Oh, thanks.
I love the dialogue.
Well, that's what we're here for. You know, it's
And I love.
one of the great things about what we do here is that we own and operate the station. We don't have stock, that we have to worry about. We're not publicly traded. We don't have a corporate parent, so we get to do whatever we want, basically. And so we take that responsibility seriously.
Right.
We got to get the issues out there for the folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do.
We don't tell. There's nobody on this radio station that we have ever said you can't talk about that. It's never happened, and it never will.
That's a good thing.
And I bring not just conservative-minded people. I bring all sorts of people on this show.
Yeah.
Most that I invite don't want to come sometimes because they're afraid of the questions.
Yeah. See, I'm not afraid.
And you shouldn't be.
Yeah, I like it. So I do this all the time. So I'm with it.
I think that's why people like Lorraine are like, okay, I can understand that, and because again, it's we don't have to agree to find that common ground.
Right.
You explain what equitable means to you. We've talked about what it means to us plenty of times on this show. Somewhere in the middle, we got to figure out, okay, that's a word. Is there a common ground in execution of it? And I thought you explained it pretty well.
Oh, thank you.
I had a meme up for a while that had three boxes, and it's defined. It's the same concept. The equal boxes, different sizes. The shortest never gets to see over.
Over the fence, yeah.
And the other one, and I can see it. That my biggest issue is that right now, especially in the political side of stuff, it's not used, in my opinion. I don't think they're using that word. I think they're using it more like a trickery word than actually making things equitable for people in that respect, because they're excluding the input part. They're encouraging our youth to go straight for what it is that they thought they should receive from whatever it is that they put in. So if you worked harder than me at the same function, but I walked out with $3,000.
Yeah, participation trophies are crap.
And that's my issue with
No, I don't believe in
equitable.
We are back in here, and we would very much appreciate you joining the conversation. If you got the time, 346-3000. You don't get to hear what happens behind the scenes here when we're in break and we start these conversations. And I was having a conversation with Dr. Miller here about the city school district during the last break, and Peter said, "Hey, get on there and ask those things, for the benefit of the audience." And Paul, you mentioned a sentiment that was expressed by someone from Harvard about you and I were just talking loosely about the fixability, if you will, of the RCSD. And tell the folks what you told me.
Right. So recently in a conversation, a Harvard professor stated that Rochester City School District is one of the only unfixable districts in America. And so, well, I disagree. And I disagree from a standpoint of, I believe I can fix it. Now, do I think that it's fixable the way that it is currently? No. Do I think that it's fixable with the leadership that they continue to select? Absolutely not. So if it was asked, how do you fix it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing would be working with the board to understand that their job is governance and not operations. So you don't ask if I was a heart surgeon and I was the best heart surgeon in the world, and you were on my board and you were a lawyer or you were a human resource specialist, why would you tell me how to operate on the left aorta, or a ventricle? You wouldn't tell me that.
Right.
You would.
So the board is micromanaging. They're interfering.
Oh, absolutely. They're operating. They're operating the district. If you look at the history of the last 11 leaders, everyone that leaves, part of their way out, they're saying that they can't get anything done because the board is telling them what they should do and how they should do it.
Mhm.
But you got a bunch of people who might be good people with good intentions, but don't know anything about how to change education. What they are is fairly elected officials who want to see good, but what they should be doing is using their power and ability to govern, not to operate. And so that would be my first step. Second place would be to blow it all up. So blow it up, get rid of the middlemen, get rid of a lot of the fat and trim it and create an autonomous school model, where autonomous school model would still be underneath the district, but they would have the ability to have more accountability and more responsibility, but more autonomy.
Hang on for just a second. Tell them what an autonomous school model means.
Right. So autonomous school model would be where each school would be its own entity underneath the district's umbrella. So they would get their own budget. They would choose their own school leader. They would choose their own teachers within the teachers that they have in their selection pool. Right. They would be able to also craft the model and utilize what they want to use. And they would still have to answer to the board, obviously, but they don't have to go through the red tape of the district. So right now, when a district leader wants to get a decision passed, they often have to go through 4 or 5 steps and wait a month or two to even get something approved that they really want to do, which that by that time needs have changed.
So you would return control of the individual schools to the local communities. So we're bringing back control to that school and the folks who run it, and the families who are served there.
Absolutely. And at the same time, what would be crucial to making this work is training the leaders on how to do this, training the parents on how this needs to be done, training the teachers and educators how this needs to be done, and building it through. So right now, if they're running a school on $40,000 a child, which they don't have access to all that money because a lot of it's misappropriated through the fat that goes on in the district. And then on top of that, the charter schools are running successfully with higher statistics and data here locally, but also nationally at 14.3. There's a big difference there. Give me the 24 that's allocated for actually for the state per pupil and make the changes that are needed. But teach people how to do it and build a model of accountability and responsibility and put in models that actually work and make sure that it happens, and do that with the failing schools. I've said, hey, give me your 10 lowest performing schools. I'll even do the first one for free and show you how to do it. They won't take me up on that offer.
You changed the narrative too much for them.
Yeah, real quick before Peter, I'll give you your show back here in just a minute. I promise. So let me ask you this, Paul. I mean, how much of a factor is the unionized situation with work rules and inflexibility and lack of accountability?
I believe it's a huge problem. I don't have a problem with unions. What I have a problem with is when the unions defend wrong, when the unions defend people who aren't doing their jobs, when the unions defend people and put rules in place that stop people from doing what they're meant to do in their why, which is connected to children. So that's what I have a problem with. And when it's doing that, that becomes a barrier to getting the results that you would like to see. So unions by ideology are a good thing if they're protecting the employee, but when they're protecting them in the wrong ways, there's never a good thing about that.
Got it. Okay, Peter, all yours.
I really like this guy. Ladies and gentlemen,
It's a fascinating conversation.
Very much.
Because you listen to the media, you watch what's happening, you look at the kids who are being ill served by this. This is the real tragedy. Is what's happening to the kids, and there's all this hand wringing that goes on, and you want to scream out, can't somebody take control of this situation and try something different. Obviously, what we're doing is not working, right, Paul?
Absolutely not. I mean, it goes so deep that I've had conversations with firsthand sources that have stated that the board members didn't understand what SMART goals were. They didn't understand how to implement strategic plans. They didn't understand, they focused less than 20% of their time on results for students, and the rest was on all the other gobbledygook, right? And so they're focusing on the wrong things, and they're telling people how to run a school district that they're not trained to do. And so, absolutely, I could beat a dead horse all day with this.
Requirements to be a school board member, what are they?
High school diploma and be elected.
That's it, huh?
And you get paid. One of the few paid school boards in America.
Yeah.
And so they're making, and don't quote me, I could have my numbers a little off, but I think somewhere between close to 30 grand to be a school board member, to not get results for our kids.
I also understand of the school boards that are paid, they're one of the highest school boards paid, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
So a federal Department of Education and the state regents board, I mean, really, what's the purpose for them? I don't think there's any, frankly. I think that's part of the siphoning the money. I understand the Department of Education at the state level to help funnel money or allocate at least the tax dollars. But regents, I mean, is there a role for them anymore, especially with concepts like school choice or charter schools, homeschooling, which is on the rise because of much of what parents are seeing?
Well, typically the Board of Regents and NICET, which would be where the New York State Board of Regents works through, they authorize charter schools, but they don't nearly authorize as many charter schools as SUNY. SUNY has almost, and don't quote me exactly, but I think somewhere around 230 charter schools, where NICET has about 100 charter schools, and their stance typically is not one of favor of charter schools, and so they typically are in the place where they're not necessarily helpful in the school choice arena. And is there a place for them? I'm sure there's opportunity for them, and then there's some good regents as well. Like I know there's some newer regents, and there's some that do some good things, but overall, I think their body aligns to the union's ideologies and not doing what it takes to help all kids succeed, only certain ones.
Another example of why how political ideology just continues to destroy our future, Bob. And the thing is, it doesn't matter what party it is. It's when politics infiltrates and runs things, this is what we end up with. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go nowhere. We have one more segment left, 346-3000. Give us a call to the Conservative New York aquí in the WYSL studios.
Peter and Dr. Paul Miller will return on WYSL.
Oh, never think you're taking over my show at all. Those are phenomenal questions.
Oh, no problem. I deal with it every day. I mean, it's always, we've had Beatrice LeBron in here.
No, yeah, we had Beatrice LeBron there. That was funny. She won't come on again, but I got another school board member coming on who wouldn't come on unless he's allowed to talk.
I thought we were gentle with her. Right?
Who's the next one?
Scott Patterson.
Oh, he's the one actually fighting against us.
Against you guys?
No, not against us. He's actually hates the mess that's going on in the district,
right?
And he wants to change it, but they're fighting him, and they treat him like he's crazy, but he's the one that is really speaking some sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to have him on here shortly. Tomorrow we have a Gajo, or not tomorrow. Friday I got a bump as well. We have a boxer coming on, a young boxer, world champion. I don't know much about boxing. Do some research.
Did you get my email about the guy with the mobile welding thing?
Actually, I saw it this morning.
Guy?
I'm going to send him an email.
I think it's a really interesting. That's a great concept.
I thought so too. But it's all about teaching and learning and engaging. That's what everybody we bring on. That's
taking it out to the community. It's just a great idea. He called up and said, "Oh yeah," he was looking for exposure on the thing.
I'll get him on next week if he's available. Although every other Thursday I may find a guest host for a little while because I got to start hitting the Italian American Community Center lunch.
You want to make sure
Some of what I discussed with you before, with certain people in the campaign, is now causing disruption. This has become a trick.
How do you like politics?
My head's still spinning. But the thing is, we're heading down a path that I've been down before with other old leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, you've run before. Okay. Anyway.
Politics of politics is destructive.
That's why I stay in my lane in education.
Of course not. We're back in talking education here on Next Steps with Peter Vasquez and Dr. Paul Miller, brought to you by Rock Auto Service, 1132 Ridge Road West, near Mount Reed, Flower City Collision, and the real estate appraisal firm of Ryan Murphy and Associates. Again, here's Peter.
Like Dr. What's his name? Jeepers, Frederick Douglass said,
Yes.
right? You know, it is an educated slave is unfit to be a slave, you know? So, I mean, I was looking at graduation rates, and the graduation rate for blacks and browns are embarrassing. You know, for this country, it's astonishing to me. But yet you're graduating the same population at 95% and above and 100% college. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you can't convince me that the problem is mom or dad. I mean, maybe sometimes. You know, as an educator, I think you and I can say, hey, you know, sometimes parents are like, listen, you gotta get out of the way. But so are administrators and so are policies. But man, I'll tell you, it's the bureaucracy. I'm not even going to call it politics. It's the bureaucracy, the red tape that is just insane. But listen, we've been talking charter schools. I would really like your opinion on school choice in general. Voucher programs, magnet schools, homeschooling. And I guess from my perspective, what I really like about all those options is that they not only elicit, they almost demand the parents to be involved. And as an educator myself for that short time, and even in college, I've learned that without the parents' involvement, it becomes much more difficult for the child, you know, to really achieve in school, especially when they're dealing with some of their own internal stuff.
Well, competition breeds excellence.
It does.
So when, for anybody that's ever competed in a sport, if you competed against someone that wasn't as good as you, are you really pushing yourself to be better? Like at the end of the day, for those folks who don't want school choice, it's because they don't want competition. They feel like it's taking away from them. And in all honesty, it's actually giving you an opportunity to perform, because what school choice says is that if you're doing it well, why would somebody go somewhere else? And so with school choice, often, speaking in the charter school world, often what happens is that most charter schools, not all, are in low-income areas. If you look at Rochester, Rochester serves in the charter school world 90% black and brown students and 90% poverty. So similar statistics to ones that I've stated to my schools in Albany when I used to run them. And when I state that, my deep belief is that quite a few of the parents that are serviced don't have the means to go to the suburbs, or don't have the means to necessarily go to a private school. And hopefully at one point in time, they'll develop those means, but they don't have that. So why don't they deserve a good education or a good choice? They deserve a choice and an option just the way somebody does who's a little bit more affluent and wealthy. And so what school choice does is provides a choice. The money should follow the child. So wherever the child goes, that money should follow them, whether it's a voucher, stipend, homeschool, even in private school, whatever someone decides to do with their child, it should be that parent's choice to give their child the best education possible, regardless of their income bracket, regardless of their tax bracket. And that's really what I believe deeply. In school choice, it makes me even angrier when black and brown folks don't like school choice, because black and brown folks wanted to fight for a seat in the front of the bus, but you don't want to fight for your school, to have a choice what school your child goes to. So like, it's crazy to me that you want to fight for a bus seat, but you don't want to fight for a school choice because your mom went to the district and your dad went to the district and your grandma, and that's all you know, versus really knowing that school choice gives you more options and gives you the option to, in our country, to decide what you want to do with your child.
Absolutely. Enrique, thank you for calling the Next Step Show, sir. Oh, Ed,
Yeah.
¿cómo estás?
Yeah, Ed, go for it.
Todavía se me acuerdo. ¿Cómo estás?
I like that solution. I think that could potentially help. There's union-free districts that do exceptionally well. Dr. Paul Miller. Thank you. God bless you as well.
Gracias, hermano Ed. I appreciate the call. Ladies and gentlemen, 346-3000. We may have time for one or two more
we can
calls
do
if
one
they're
more.
quick.
Sure. 346, but you got to hustle. Because the tempest is fuging here.
So, people that are critics of school choice would say that we're taking away from a public system that serves the most needy of the needy. We're taking away resources, and they say that school choices like magnet schools and charter schools pick and choose their students, which is why their success rates are so high.
That's poo-poo. Absolutely not true. You look at the statistics and data, and as a school leader, and if you look in New York State, it's illegal to do that. You have to take first come, first serve. You also have to take a lottery. So if you have more applicants than you have seats by April 14th or April 1st, whenever the deadline is, you have to hold a lottery. And that lottery is held by a third party. You have to take whatever the lottery says you have to take. And then after the lottery, you have to take first come, first serve. So if little Peter is a terrorist and is going to tear up your school, you got to take him regardless of whether he was a high performer or whether he was, unfortunately, a very low performer. So you have to take him. You don't have that choice, especially not New York State. There's high accountability. And so does it happen? I'm sure that things happen that shouldn't happen. And there's always exceptions to every rule, which I'm not saying there should be, but also I'm realistic. However, the majority and the law and the rules state that it's not supposed to happen, and it doesn't happen.
Mary, thank you for calling the Next Step Show. We've got a very short time.
You know, I definitely think that's an integral part of building a school is the community resources and building those in. Just where I was at previously, we built a construction tech lab with certification for kids, a cyber tech lab. We also built a full service barbershop where they got their apprentice license, and we built a music production studio, and all connected to community resources. So giving kids more choices and options. And so I definitely believe that. And quite a few of the charter schools do have partnerships with community organizations. That's a huge part of the autonomy of being able to do that. And it's definitely necessary to make sure that the schools flourish is to have the community resources embedded into the school.
Absolutely. Mary, thank you so much for the call. We're running out of time. I apologize. You want to respond to her last statement?
I just think that she's right, there should be more of that going on. And if there's organizations out there that want to get involved with specifically the charter schools to do some of those things that Mary is talking about, then please reach out at www.charterchampions.org, and you can find me. I'm there. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Briefly, can you kind of end your everything we're doing? You gave your website for the charter schools, urbaneeducation.com. Can you tell us what that is quickly, and then any next steps advice you have for our listeners?
Sure. So I also I'm a little busy, so I write books and I speak all over the country. I write books. My fourth book will be coming out in a couple of weeks, called From the Gutter to Greatness. Urbane Education Alterations is my consulting company. I work with school leaders. I'm a certified executive coach. I do strategic planning. I help schools get better results. All they got to do is be willing, and we can definitely get results for our students. I also have another organization called Building Capacity that helps to build and create new charter schools. And so do a lot right now currently, and just trying to change the narrative that's out there through education.
Any advice you can give to our listeners? We'd like to call them next steps advice. Like, what can they do next to really push forward, help you, whatever it is?
So the biggest thing that would really happen is elect legislatures and elected officials who are aligned to school choice, who are aligned to equitable funding, because currently the people who are elected are not aligned to that. And that would be a huge difference for the schools to receive the funding that they need to operate, to continue to get the excellent results that the schools do.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Paul Miller. Thank you for your time, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me say it. Be a leader, be a leader, be a leader, and say it with me. Leadership is the beacon that guides me, for it's through selfless service that I illuminate the way for others to find their greatness. Y mira, don't forget que aquí on the WYSL stations, La Voz de Libertad y tu conservative Nuyorican on the Next Step show siempre te amamos. Thank you so much.
Oh, anytime. Go ahead, man. It was great.
Appreciate it.
Hopefully, gave
Good conversation.
good conversation.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I think our listeners, I mean, Mary, I don't ever remember hearing her call before,
No,
so
no.
I know we've got listeners that
That's good.
I'm calling.